I'm going to unglue the top so I can pour it out. These make great little palettes. They actually have a cover to them so you can put it on top and protect your watercolors. You don't have to rinse out your tray with watercolor, especially since that little tiny tube can be kind of expensive. So save your watercolors in your tray. All you have to do is add more water to them. And if you're worried about germs, add a little bit of liquid soap. Tiny little bit of liquid soap goes a long way. So I poured out some cheap glue, and then I'm going to spray it with water to dilute it even more. Not too much water. We don't want it watery, but we don't want it so thick that it bonds and it's hard to break open the pages. Now I'm using a cheap brush. Don't use your good watercolor brushes for this. Find a cheap brush, a paint brush that you get at the paint store, or 99-cent, or even a foam brush, because, you know, glue can really destroy. You want to keep your watercolor paints for watercolors, and you want to keep your cheap paints or your cheap brushes for just that. So save your watercolor brushes for watercolor. Use cheap brushes for cheap materials. Okay, so I'm going to paint the edge here. And of course I'll get a little bit on the first page. That'll be your experimental page. You see I'm painting all the way around the edge here. Notice my hand's in the center here to make sure all the pages don't buckle or fold. And then I'm going to paint this edge. Okay, so I've painted one side and the other. Put a generous amount of glue on because we have diluted it, and we want to make sure it covers it all. And you can see you got a little bit on. I got a little bit on the top. I can just wipe that off. I won't be able to paint. Make sure you wipe out this way so you don't smear more glue on the page, because those edges that have been touched by glue, I will not be able to paint watercolor on it. It'll mess up the surface. Now, the bottom one, I have not painted yet. This side I have not painted. So I can come in with a little bit on this edge and a little bit on this edge. And technically, you don't even have to do that much. But don't paint the center here. You need a little spot where you can slip your ruler under there and tear off the first page. And then, of course, you can get onto the second page and then the third page and so on. So you need a little hole where you can slip one of your thin rulers. I'll use a triangle here. After it dries, I'm going to be able to slip right under here. This will all be glued. And I'll be able to slip this under here and slide my plastic around and tear off the first page. So it stays glued down until I want it to not be glued down anymore. And that's the wonderful thing about a watercolor tablet. You must secure your pages so they don't buckle. If you don't have any glue or you don't want to try this, you can also just take a piece of regular masking tape and tape the edges and tape all this side all the way around. And then, of course, when you want to go on to the next page of watercolor paper, all you have to do is tear off the tape. I like the nice neatness of the glue. If it doesn't bond all the pages, then come in with a thicker layer and paint another coat. You don't want it so thick that you can't tear the pages apart, but you don't want it so thin that if it gets really wet, it starts unraveling and the pages start coming apart. So, again, brush the glue out this way, and then you're ready to go. Now, while that's drying, I'm going to take, oh, and don't buy this, buy watercolor paper. Strathmore is my favorite brand. Now I'm going to set this on top as an anchor. I might even put a couple more objects on top to make sure it's nice and secure. You just want that tablet to dry flat so that glue bonds to the sides really well. And then, of course, after a couple hours, it'll be fine and ready to use.